Welcome to the Thursday edition of Weather to Watch. We have 2 more days left in the month of February. We'll take a little bit of a look down the road to March and see what's going on. What I have on the screen right now is some drought relief possible, and this may be accompanied by severe weather. All of this is a pattern shift that's expected to happen in a few weeks. We'll talk about that. Also, is there any snow still showing up in the U.S.? A little bit, but not nearly as intense as it was. And we'll also talk about a little bit more heavy rain in the forecast for the Midwest. Again, another drought relief situation. All that coming up. Hi, I'm meteorologist Ted Keller. Here's a visible satellite loop taken from in the afternoon hours today on this Thursday, showing a mostly clear country, really. We have a weather system in the southeast that we'll dive into here in a minute. We still have a flow out of the northwest across the northern plains that is going to be responsible, again, for a little bit of snow up in the upper part of the Midwest. You can still see snow on the ground, and it doesn't move. It's probably snow, like right there and right there. Let's look at the 500 millibar flow. Now, this is something I overlay to show you the general flow in the middle of the active part of the atmosphere. It's a general guide to storminess and temperature patterns, basically. And this is a large, long wave, what we call a long wave trough. Little short waves embedded in this, although there aren't any real significant ones. Really, this one right here will probably aid this precipitation event here later on tonight and early tomorrow. Otherwise, this just supplies cold air here, and that's where the snow support's going to come from, and just a ridge of high pressure out over the western U.S. with high clouds like that deck right there, usually draping over the top of ridges like that. And take a look at the surface map, at least the way the computer thinks it'll look. This is one of the models at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. So high pressure in the northeast, and the colors of the temperatures, so the coolest air by far is in Minnesota and North Dakota and across almost all of the northeastern U.S. Now, I did mention there's a weather system in the southeastern U.S. Here's a loop, radar loop from the late afternoon. You can see a few severe thunderstorm warnings popping up there in northern Alabama. And that's the next thing I'll talk about. A little, pretty good little cell there north of Little Rock. And some of these may be severe. In fact, the severe weather forecast for the period tonight and through tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. does call for a level 2 out of 5 severe weather threat there in the core of Mississippi and little sections of nearby states. There's virtually no tornado threat with this. It's all a high wind and maybe a little bit of hail. And that's the short-term severe weather outlook. I want to talk a little bit about next week, though. And, pattern changing is what it's all about. And I want to show you 2 days and 2 different models. So this is the GEFS. This is an ensemble model, a blended model, where you take all the results from this, which are all started with slightly different conditions, and then average them together. This is it's a recommended way of looking at model data, anything past, let's say, day 3 or 4 or 5, somewhere in there, because it takes the outliers out. So in other words, when you run a single model without the ensemble method, if you will, it's going to give sometimes really quirky results. You'll see that all over the internet. Don't fall for that stuff. Hurricanes that pop up on the GFS is one example. Crazy snowstorms that have no chance of existing. Anyway, so that's why I look at this. Now, what I'm looking for here is trends, both in this model showing the same pattern and in the other model I'll show you showing the same pattern. So in other words, run to run on this and comparing 2 models together. So having said all of that, here's the 500 millibar flow for Wednesday coming up in 6 days. And you see, just generally speaking, this trough of low pressure that I just showed you over the eastern U.S. is coming back now to the west. And there's also what we would call a shorter wave or disturbance moving through Texas, with that being a wind maximum. And notice that the winds are coming in strong in the coastal areas of California. That's an important sign that this feature here may deepen this trough. That's Wednesday. Same model, or I'm sorry, different model. I forgot how I arranged it. Different model. This is the EPS, and it's for the same day. And you'll notice it's very similar. So there's a leading, what we would call short wave, and a lot of evidence that this long wave trough is going to be carved out by that little wind surge right there. So on the Wednesday forecast, to the learning model, the severe thunderstorm probability, this is Colorado State University's model for Wednesday, does put, and it's meager, but it does outline, it kind of establishes, I guess you could say, that there might be severe weather, a low percentage chance, 5%, right there across Oklahoma and parts of the Ozarks. So for many of my viewers who are mostly in the Ozarks, I wanted to give you a heads up on that. That's Wednesday. Now let's go ahead to Thursday. Again, this is the same two models, different day now. Notice that it's true. The longer wave trough is being carved out. That little short wave is really just showing up as a bump of speed maximum there. If we go ahead to the EPS, again, this is being carved out. This is certainly the stronger of the two systems. Meanwhile, that little bump right there and that wind speed maximum was the short wave that was here 24 hours ago. And sure enough, if we look at the machine learning probability, it puts a bullseye in northwest Arkansas and ups the percentage to 15%. So again, there is something worth watching in this period, just not quite sure what it is yet. And for those of us who are parched a little bit here lately, it's been dry in this area. I'll talk about that in a second too, so that goes hand in hand with this threat. I did want to go ahead and show you the severe weather supercell composite for the 5th through the 11th. And it does show the highest index I've seen so far this winter going into spring. This is just a percentage probability average over a week's time. So this is the 5th through the 11th. But again, what it tells me anyway, is that there's a long wave trough being established here and the possibility that there will be little short waves moving along and there's enough time evolving for moisture to come up from the Gulf, and that could lead to a severe weather probability. That's week 2. Week 3 goes way out there to the 12th through the 18th, and while that diminishes, there is still a general pattern, and you can kind of just tell by looking at it that it's supportive of a band of stronger winds here and moisture return coming back up from the south. It's just the details are not always known. Maybe on some systems you may not get this probability going up very far because there's a front that comes down and cuts off the moisture supply, something like that. And I did want to show you the climatological norm for March, by the way. And this is just the period 1994 to 2024. And this is any severe weather. This could be tornadoes, hail, or strong winds, and it's moving. So this is again over the 31 days, but the epicenter runs from southeast Oklahoma due east into Alabama and Mississippi. But it is growing northward, and in the areas I was outlining are all right in here. So that is consistent with what we should happen. And latest, and I'll put this in a link. There have been a couple of tornado outlooks, but there's one that's done by Convective Chronicles that I actually posted on Facebook, and I'll put the link to that in the description here. It's long, and it could be a little bit technical for some people, but it is very comprehensive and educational, and he talks a lot about what's expected just in the tornado season this year. Not all severe weather, just tornadoes, but I'd recommend giving that a watch and a listen. Is there any heavy rain? You bet. We've got some drought relief coming. Let's start with the short term. So this is the Weather Prediction Center's WPC up in the upper left-hand corners. Forecast for the next 5 days. This is what we would call a quantitative precipitation forecast. So it really doesn't include whether this is rain or snow. It really just takes, so if there's snow in this, we would assume that you take the snow, melt it down in a rain gauge, and then put it on this map. So this band actually is a snow band. I'll show you that in a minute. This, however, is solid rain. Now, this is a 5-day total, so it doesn't differentiate weather systems. So that's the next thing I'm going to do here is show you that they believe heavy rain parameters might be exceeded in this area right here. I live right here, and we've been a little dry this winter, so this is excellent news. And by the way, it doesn't stop here, but this is just the next system coming in. This is Wednesday through Thursday, so 6 days from now. But it is a fairly high confidence level that this will develop from Missouri and Arkansas, northeast into southern Illinois, and parts of adjacent states. As far as the forecast for that period, so this is the 6 to 7 days specifically, not the whole 5 days. This goes out 2 specific days. And it does show that central Missouri right along I-44 there. Looks like we're up to about 2, maybe a little bit more inches of rain there. Again, I don't think that'll be a flooding concern, but it'll be very welcome rain because of the drought. And when I show you the extended forecast that goes out even more, I'll show you the drought index. But here is, just to round things out, the Wednesday through Sunday time period, where there is definitely an enhanced rainfall area from Michigan to Texas. So that's worth talking about. And again, it's that pattern change with the jet stream kind of setting up there. Let's show you what snow is out there. This is through, oops, I deleted it. This is through 6 p.m. Sunday. Sorry about that. I messed up the label. But there's that little trickle of a snow band. By recent standards, not much. And then this is actually the northern end of a system that's coming through late in the weekend. Northern Missouri and Iowa maybe get a couple of inches of snow out of that. And that really sums up the snow for the next 72 hours. And really beyond that, not much confidence in talking about it. But snow's not really showing up much anymore, at least not in these extended forecasts. So the week that started a couple of days ago on Monday and goes through Sunday is still showing that ridging out west, and that is what's going to reverse. And this will be updated later on today. And I'll show this to you with the next weather to watch. But what you're going to see is this purplish color is going to start showing up here instead of the red. So the ridge and the trough are releasing each other, kind of switching positions. This has meant the real cool air. Florida has been cold this winter. So all this is reversing so that the cool weather is going to end up here and the warmer weather is going to end up here. But for now, to round out this week, very warm in all these areas covered in orange. But let's take a look at the specifics of the temperature forecast. We'll go every other day or so. Here's tomorrow, Friday, an abundance of above normal temperatures as indicated by the yellowish color shading. And that includes a whole horde of 70s in Missouri and out through Kansas and Oklahoma and Arkansas. So Wichita will get to 74 tomorrow. And it looks like 78 in the Dallas area. Getting hot in the southwest, too. Phoenix, 94 on Friday. The only cool air left is on the coasts here and a little bit in the Pacific Northwest, and that's it. 2 days ahead, there is definitely a cold front. You can see how it infringes, I guess, on the northern plains. It does support that little snow system I talked about late Sunday there. But, cold again with Duluth only 15 degrees. Detroit just really not really getting the freezing. Very cold in upstate New York as well. But this is just an interruption to the pattern, because if we go Sunday ahead to Tuesday, you see the evidence of a little front that came down through here, probably the last one or there's going to be kind of a stationary one that sets up here, I think, the majority of the first part of March here, but warming up in the high plains finally on Tuesday, and the Northeast still seeing persistent cool. But now this is going beyond. This is Tuesday, so let's go to Wednesday through Sunday and watch what happens. So the eastern U.S. starts to warm up. That's, again, changing that pattern that we talked about. So the highest confidence for above normal temperatures is right here centered on the Tennessee River Valley. So finally, let's look 2 weeks out. I'll talk more about that graph I started with and show you about some additional rain and maybe some severe weather possibilities too. So this is really going out there. This is the 6th through the 12th. So this is week 2. And there it is, and this is interesting. I don't plot this much for 2 weeks out. I don't see it much out of the National Center that produces this map. But this is a high risk of heavy rain. Centered in Arkansas, beginning into southern Missouri and covering much of eastern Oklahoma and Texas, parts of Louisiana and Mississippi. So a high risk that this is going to exceed the percentile for what's considered normal. And so this is really good news. Could this be accompanied by severe weather? You bet. It's really impossible to tell this far out. It could just be wet weather systems. It would be most likely on the edge of whatever trains of rain that develop through this area. I wanted to show you the drought index zoomed in, though. Some of the driest air in the country is really in northeast Arkansas up into Illinois and kind of scattered through Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas. So if I overlay the two, you can kind of see this is a pretty good match for at least trying to alleviate some drought, although it is still very prevalent in Florida. No immediate release for that particular state on the drought index. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.